So fresh and so clean in my red, black, and green. Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, bitch, I'm Martin Luther King. It ain't nothing to redeem. Everybody hate niggas, even your own kind too. Everybody ain't with us, so we gotta vet the room. Point out all the coons, deal with the cracker first. Then it's time coming soon. Vote for who? Vote for what?
I want to commend the leadership of the National Conference on New Politics for all of the great work that they have done in making this significant convention possible. Indeed, by our very nature, we affirm that something new is taking place on the American political horizon. We have come here from the dusty plantations of the Deep South.
Listen, all of this is very, very important.
And the depressing ghettos of the North. We have come from the great universities and the flourishing suburbs. We have come from Appalachian poverty and from conscience-stricken wealth. But we have come. We have come here because we share a common concern for the moral health of our nation. We have come because our eyes have seen through the superficial glory and glitter of our society and observed.
Okay, right. He is describing the scene in the 60s, right? This was after the Voting Rights Act got passed and all this. And this is after he and Foundation of Black Americans in this country helped get Lyndon Johnson elected. Lyndon Johnson was running against an open, unapologetic white supremacist. I think it was Barry Goldwater, right? He was a Trump type, you know, openly white supremacist. And they ran the same game on black people that they just ran in 2020 with the Biden-Trump election, you know. One side had nothing to offer but fear. Like they played on the black people's fear of Trump. Y'all better vote for us, because, you know, big bad Donald Trump get in office, you know, y'all going back to slavery. So they played that angle in the 60s just like they did today. And Dr. Martin Luther King is about to address it. And it's just as relevant today as it was when he said, pay attention and ride with me. If your attention span is low, you might as well go ahead and turn the video off right now, because we gonna do a deep dive into this speech with Dr. Martin Luther King to illustrate that non-violence was a tactic, a temporary tactic, excuse me. But my brother was by any means necessary also, as you will see in this video.
The coming of judgment, like the prophet of old, we have read the handwriting on the wall. We have seen our nation weighed in the balance of history and found wanting. We have come because we see this as a dark hour in the affairs of men. For most of us, this is a new move. We are traditionally the idealists. We are the marchers from Mississippi and Selma and Washington, who staked our lives on the American dream during the first half of this decade. Many of them.
What he's talking about right here on this part, it was like, you know, black people are optimistic people. You know what I mean? We've been faced with just incredibly dire circumstances in this country, and we always fought all the way through it, whatever it was. And at this point in time, in modern times, where you got media, where you can, you know, spread the word literally overnight, and we had the attention of the world on the racism problem in America, that's supposed to be a democratic country where everybody is equal, right? So Martin Luther King felt like if he could expose that to the world as a lie, that would put pressure on his government to really do something to enact some change. But they didn't do it. Now he's talking about the move changing. See, this is what came after all that turn the other cheat shit that they put out there, all that shit that they still trying to perpetuate through John Lewis's name. Now, like the legacy of Martin Luther King is nonviolence. That is a lie told by the enemy. See, they killed Martin Luther King. That's like a victory. And the winner of the war writes the history. He tell you, what happened in his words, through his eyes. But we gonna look into the mind, the great mind, and the mindset of Dr. Martin Luther King today.
Here campaigned decidiously for Lyndon Johnson in 1964 because we could not stand idly by and watch our nation contaminated by the 18th century policies of Goldwaterism. We were the hardcore activists who were willing to believe that Southerners could be reconstructed in the constitutional image. We were the dreamers of a dream, that dark yesterdays of man's inhumanity to man would
Martin Luther King thought at one time that the spirit and the soul of the white man was redeemable. He realized that it was not. That's where we at right now.
Soon be transformed into bright tomorrows of justice. Now it is hard to escape the disillusionment of betrayal. Our hopes have been blasted, and our dreams have been shattered. The promise of a great society was shipwrecked.
Till this day, shout out to Dante Wilder.
Off the coast of Asia on the dreadful peninsula of Vietnam, the poor black and white, are still perishing on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a...
Martin Luther King was a man that believed in altruism, and America, white America, killed that in him. It's the hate that hate made. It's the righteous hate that hate made.
Vast ocean of material prosperity. What happens to a dream deferred? It leads to bewildering frustration and corroding bitterness. I came to see this in a personal experience here in Chicago.
And buildings burning down, and bricks upside motherfuckers' heads, and boots in crackers' ass. That's what the dream deferred brings. In 2022, Martin tried to tell him.
Last summer, and all the speaking that I have done in the United States before varied audiences, including some hostile whites, the only time that I have ever been booed was one night in our regular weekly mass meeting by some angry young men of our movement. I went home that night.
Okay. This part right here. Martin Luther King said he has spoke in front of people all over the world, black people, white people, everything, right? He said the first time he ever got booed, it was by a group of young black people. That reminds me of something. Okay, Al Sharpton, right? In no way am I comparing Al Sharpton to Martin Luther King. So don't nobody try to go there in the comment section. And then I'm just saying, right? Okay. Philadelphia. I don't remember what year it was, but it was recently. It was Freddie Gray. When Freddie Gray got killed, the guy that they rode around in the back of the paddy wagon, doing donuts, running over shit, whatever, bumped him around, and he ended up dying. And they got in the streets in Philadelphia about that, right? So they out there filming and whatnot. Al Sharpton pull up. So he come up as soon as he got out the car. Them young brothers, the activists with boots on the ground, who was out there in the streets taking that bullshit, they told Al, bro, pull up. We ain't trying to hear that. Ain't no fucking waiting. Ain't no waiting no more. No, it's now. And you know what I mean? They backed him down. And it seems as though since Philadelphia, it's like them reporters, they not as quick to run out there on the street, you know, and stop somebody on the street and ask them about it, because, you know, boots on the ground, a lot of them people out there in the street now, they listen to people like, you know, the Black Channel and stuff like that, and they got their talking points ready, and they know what to say, right? And they don't want that shit spread. But this particular part, it reminds me of that. I got a little bit ahead of them because, you know, I already watched it, right? But check it out.
With an ugly feeling, selfishly, I thought of my sufferings and sacrifices
I'm gonna go back just a little bit.
in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. What happens to a dream deferred? It leads to bewildering frustration and corroding bitterness. I came to see this in a personal experience here in Chicago last summer. And all the speaking that I have done in the United States before varied audiences, including some hostile whites. The only time that I have ever been booed was one night in our regular weekly mass meeting by some angry young men of our movement.
Okay.
I went home that night with an ugly feeling. Selfishly, I thought of my sufferings and sacrifices over the last 12 years. Why would they boo one so close to them? But as I lay awake thinking, I finally came to myself, and I could not for the life of me have less than patience and understanding for those young men.
After that happened to Al Sharpton, I doubt if he laid in bed and pondered and went back through it in his mind and assessed himself the way Dr. Martin Luther King did. He probably immediately went into some kind of selfish damage control, but we're gonna carry on.
"12 years, I and others like me had held out radiant promises of progress. I had preached to them about my dream. I had lectured to them about the not too distant day when they would have freedom, all here now.
Right.
I had urged them to have faith in America and in white society. Their hopes had soared. They were now booing me because they felt that we were unable to deliver on our promises. They were booing because we had urged them to have faith in people who had too often proved to be unfaithful.
Somewhere along the way, we lost that. Nowadays, we'll let people make us promise after promise after promise. None of them kept. And it's never a time where we like, look, fuck that. You know, we don't want to hear that shit. I want results. The talking is over. That's where we at right now. Listen to my brother address it.
They were now hostile because they were watching the dream that they had so readily accepted turn into a frustrating nightmare. This situation is all the more ominous in view of the rising expectations of men the world over. The deep rumblings that we hear today, the rumbling of discontent, is the thunder of disinherited masses rising from dungeons of oppression to the bright hills of freedom. All over the world, like a fever, freedom is spreading in the widest liberation movement in history.
Okay.
The great masses of people are determined to end the exploitation of our races and lands. In one majestic chorus, they are singing in the words of our freedom song, "Ain't gonna let nobody turn us around."
The 2020 insurrection broke that record. It was the biggest worldwide protest. I loved it. I loved it. I just wish they would have stayed on it longer. But let's listen to my brother.
And so the collision course is set.
Yep.
The people cry for freedom, and the Congress attempts to legislate repression. Millions, yes.
All black people stood up and got Joe Biden elected, and he legislated repression through mandates, anti-Asian hate bill that was targeted at black people. When everything came to the crescendo, the government legislated repression. What do you think happens next? Maybe my brother has an idea.
Billions are appropriated for mass murder, but the most meager pittance of foreign aid for international development is crushed in the surge of reaction. Unemployment rages at a major depression level in the black ghettos.
Right now, 2022, all of this is 100% relevant. And 99.9% of the black people in America have never heard this speech. They think Martin Luther King begins and ends with "I have a dream." See, hidden in plain sight within the flowery language that Martin Luther King speaks with, and the strong cadence when he speaks, the one that Obama tried to emulate and tried to do, tried to mind fuck everybody, having sounding kind of like Martin Luther King. Did anybody else remember that? But anyway, hidden in that flowery language is a threat of what's to come.
But the bipartisan response is an anti-riot bill rather than a serious poverty program.
Okay.
The modest proposals for model cities rent supplement and rat control, pitiful as they were to begin with, get caught in the maze of congressional inaction. And I submit to you tonight that a Congress that proves to be more anti-Negro than anti-rat needs to be dismissed.
Come on, y'all. Come on. Y'all ain't never heard this shit, man. Come on, man. Listen to my brother. Say we got a Congress that's more anti-black than it is anti-rat. Come on, man. He sounds just like Malcolm X. That is one of the reasons why he had to meet the same fate as Malcolm X. This man was so dangerous to society, to white society, because of his mind. He was so dangerous that they had to kill him. And they paint this picture of a Martin Luther King that never existed. Ain't too much difference between him and Malcolm X. Keep listening.
It seems that our legislative assemblies have adopted Nero as their patron saint and are bent on fiddling while our cities burn. Even when the people persist and in the face of great obstacles develop indigenous leadership and self-help approaches to their problems, and finally tread the forest of bureaucracy to obtain existing government funds. The corrupt political order seeks to crush even this beginning of hope. The case of CDGM in Mississippi is the most publicized example, but it is a story repeated many times.
A modern day example of what he's talking about right there is Detroit and other cities that had black mayors, you know what I mean, established black mayors, black city councils. They always come in with the bullshit. See, we've been in a race war the whole time. We attacked on all 7 levels of life. Shout out to Neely Fuller.
Across our nation, our own experience here in Chicago is especially painfully present. After an enthusiastic approval by HEW's Department of Adult Education, SCLC began an adult literacy project to aid 1,000 young men and women who have been pushed out of overcrowded ghetto schools in obtaining basically literacy skills prerequisite to receiving jobs. We had an agreement with A&P Stores for 750 jobs through SCLC's job program, Operation Breadbasket, and had recruited over 500 pupils the first week. At that point, Congressman Kuczynski and the Daily Machine intervened and demanded that Washington cut off our funds or channel them through the machine-controlled poverty program in Chicago. Now,
to this day,
our funds are being stopped as of September, and a very meaningful program discontinued. Yes, the hour is dark. Evil comes forth in the guise of good. It is a time of double talk when men in high places have a high blood pressure of deceptive rhetoric and an anemia of concrete performance.
The Democratic Party that gets their power from black people, they got those very same characteristics that my brother just laid out.
We crowd against welfare handouts to the poor, but generously approve an oil depletion allowance to make the rich richer. 6 Mississippi plantations receive more than $1 million a year, not to plant cotton, but no provision is made to feed the tenant farmer who is put out of work by the government subsidy. Crowning achievement.
When Martin started talking money, Martin had to go. That's the key. The money. They don't want to talk about the money, but that's what the fuck they got to talk about.
In hypocrisy must go to those staunch Republicans and Democrats of the Midwest and West who were given land by our government when they came here as immigrants from Europe. They were given education through the land grant.
Listen closely to this. What this country has done for immigrants. Listen to this shit and realize the scope and the scale and the generational wealth that was generated through handouts from the government. No, they wasn't giving them no little stank ass welfare apartments and paying for females to raise a kid with no daddy. Nah. They was setting it up for them, their grandchildren, and all this. And just like I keep saying, till this day. Listen up closer to this. I'm gonna have to rewind it just a little bit because this is crazy. Listen to this.
The crowning achievement in hypocrisy must go to those staunch Republicans and Democrats of the Midwest and West who were given land by our government when they came here as immigrants from Europe. They were given education through the land-grant colleges. They were provided with agricultural agents to keep them abreast of...
Gave them land, where he says land-grant colleges. He's talking about an actual college where they taught them how to farm. They gave them land, taught them how to farm. Crazy.
Farming trends. They were granted low-interest loans to aid in the mechanization of their farms. And now
Gave them loans to get tractors and all kind of shit. We talking large-scale farms now. We ain't talking about no little shit. Gave them low-interest loans for the equipment. Gave them land and taught them how to farm. Tell me where they ever did anything like that for the people that this country's wealth was built on.
now that they have succeeded in becoming successful, they are paid not to farm. And these are the same people who now say to black people whose ancestors were brought to this country in chains and who were emancipated in 1863 without being given land to cultivate or bread to eat, that they must pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. What?
Hold on. Let me get on some petty shit right quick. Walk with me.
Trends. They were granted low-interest loans to aid in the mechanization of their farms. And now that they have succeeded in becoming successful, they are paid not to farm. And these are the same people who now say to black people whose ancestors were brought to this country in chains and who were emancipated.
As they say to black people whose ancestors were brought to this country in chains. Shout out to Reverend Dane Calloway. I guess Martin Luther King lying too, huh? I guess Martin Luther King was created by Congress too then, huh? You dumb boy. I'll tell you.
In 1863 without being given land.
Back to business.
And to cultivate a bread to eat, that they must pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. What?
The old bootstraps line. No boots and no straps,
what
bitch.
They truly advocate is socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor.
Think about that. I ain't even gonna break it down. Just think about that.
I wish that I could say that this is just a passing phase in the cycle of our nation's life. Certainly times of war, times of reaction throughout the society. But I suspect that we are now experiencing the coming to the surface of a triple-pronged sickness that has been lurking within our body politic from its...
Listen, triple prong. Listen.
Very beginning. That is the sickness of racism, excessive materialism and militarism. Not only is this our nation's dilemma, it is the plague of Western civilization. As early as 1906, W.E.B. Du Bois prophesied that the problem of the 20th century will be the problem of the color line. Now, as we stand 2/3 into this crucial period of history, we know full well that racism is still that hound of hell which dogs the tracks of our civilization. Ever since the birth of our nation, white America has had a schizophrenic personality on the question of race. She has been torn between selves, a self in which she proudly professed the great principles of democracy, and a self in which she madly practiced the antithesis of democracy. This tragic duality has produced a strange indecisiveness and ambivalence toward the Negro, causing America to take a step backward simultaneously with every step forward on the question of racial justice. Being once attracted to the Negro and repelled by him, to love and to hate him. There has never been a solid, unified, and determined thrust to make justice a reality for Afro-Americans.
Till this day.
Backward has a new name today. It is called the white backlash. But the white backlash is nothing new.
The white lash of 2016 produced Donald Trump as your president. Like I said at the beginning, every line of this speech is still relevant today from our great brother.
It is the surfacing of old prejudices, hostilities, and ambivalences that have always been there. It was caused neither by the cry of black power, nor by the unfortunate recent wave of riots in our cities. The white backlash of today is rooted in the...
They don't need a reason, just an excuse. See, Colin Kaepernick gave them an excuse to turn their rhetoric up. That's what my great brother is talking about now, in his time.
Same problem that has characterized America ever since the black man landed in chains on the shores of this nation.
Shout out to my brother, Dane Calloway. Stop it, man. Stop it. You know, B1 is the move, and Africa is the foundation, brother. Just stop it. Let it go, man. We'll still watch your little videos or whatever. I mean, or you can be a researcher for one of those other guys, man. But back to business.
This does not imply that all white Americans are racist. Far from it. Many white people have, through a deep moral compulsion, fought long and hard for racial...
I disagree with my brother for once. I think all of them got it in them. It's just situational. You know what I mean? They operate off, I'm white and I say so. That means I can say one thing 1 minute, something else the next minute. And do not expect to get called out on it. And if I do, I'll just play like I'm an idiot and I don't understand.
Justice. Nor does it mean that America has made no progress in her attempt to cure the body politic of the disease of racism, or that the dogma of racism has not been considerably modified in recent years. However, for the good of America,
it has been refined. White supremacy, racism, that's the updated word. It has been refined, and it constantly refines itself because it has to. It stands on a lie, it's like grains of sand just falling away from the lie all the time. They trying to patch it up. It's been refined. But my great brother knew that in his day.
it is necessary to refute the idea that the dominant ideology in our country, even today, is freedom and equality.
Bullshit.
Racism is just an occasional departure from the norm on the part of a few bigoted extremists. Racism can well be that corrosive evil that will bring down the curtain on Western civilization.
Okay?
Arnold Toynbee has said that some 26 civilizations have risen upon the face of the earth. Almost all of them have descended into the junk heaps of destruction. The decline and fall of these civilizations, according to Toynbee, is not caused by external invasions, but by internal decay.
Okay?
They fail to respond creatively to the challenges impinging upon them. If America does not respond creatively to the challenge to banish racism, some future historian will have to say that a great civilization died because it lacked the soul and commitment to make justice a reality for all men.
Amen. From my brother. You know, they paint this picture of, you know, this Gandhi-like figure whose strategy is to get his ass whooped and to show people how honorable taking an ass whooping is. But he was way smarter and way slicker. See, they had him fucked up. He knew their nature was to attack innocent and defenseless people. Through his non-violent tactic, like I said earlier in the video, he exposed them to the world. And that was the end of that phase. What he is warning now is the next phase. This I present to you is the real Dr. Martin Luther King, my brother. And this your boy, Bless the Best, your host till the next post.